Princess Catalina lived in a world of castles and crowns. Her days were filled with etiquette lessons and royal duties. She attended grand balls and met dignitaries from far-off lands. Yet behind the tiara and the silken gowns, Catalina harbored a secret longing. Catalina wasn't like other princesses. While they dreamed of tiaras and grand romances, she dreamt of open skies and the smell of pine needles. She longed for the freedom to wander barefoot in the grass and feel the wind in her hair. Catalina craved the simplicity of nature, the company of animals, and the chance to be just an ordinary girl. Her royal life, for all its grandeur, felt like a gilded cage. Catalina yearned to break free, to experience the world beyond the palace walls. She longed for adventure, for genuine connection, and for the chance to discover who she truly was outside the confines of her royal role. Deep down, Catalina knew that true happiness lay not in jewels and titles, but in the simple wonders of the world around her. She just needed a chance to experience them. The princess often found herself drawn to the palace gardens. She'd spend hours wandering the manicured paths, seeking solace in the rustling leaves and the fragrant blooms. She'd sneak away from her chaperones whenever she could, just to feel the sun on her skin and the earth beneath her feet. The garden offered a taste of the freedom she craved, a brief escape from the suffocating formality of royal life. Catalina would often imagine herself far away, exploring wild forests and encountering exotic creatures. She devoured books about explorers and naturalists, her imagination soaring with each turn of the page. She longed for a life less ordinary, a life filled with the sights, sounds, and smells of the natural world. Catalina yearned to trade her silk slippers for sturdy boots and her tiara for a crown of wildflowers. One spring morning, whispers of a special trip reached Catalina's ears. The king and queen were planning a weekend visit to Berlin, and Catalina would be accompanying them. The news, however, didn't fill her with excitement for grand balls or diplomatic dinners. Instead, her heart leaped at the mention of a particular destination, the Berlin Zoo Park. This wasn't just any zoo, it was renowned for its sprawling grounds, its diverse animal inhabitants, and its commitment to conservation. Finally, an opportunity presented itself, a chance for Catalina to break free from the confines of her royal world, to trade silk and jewels for fresh air and the company of creatures great and small. The zoo represented more than just a weekend outing. It was a chance for Catalina to reconnect with her true self, to embrace the simplicity and wonder she so desperately craved. As the carriage rolled towards Berlin, Catalina couldn't help but feel a surge of anticipation. This wasn't just a royal obligation, it was an adventure waiting to unfold, and she, Princess Catalina, intended to savor every moment. The royal carriage, adorned with the royal crest, pulled up to the gates of the Berlin Zoo Park. Catalina could barely contain her excitement as she peered out the window. In their place stood a sprawling oasis of green, a haven for creatures from all corners of the globe. Her eyes were fixed on the entrance to the zoo, a gateway to a world she longed to explore. Catalina nodded, though her heart wasn't entirely in it. Stepping out of the carriage, Catalina took a deep breath of the crisp spring air. The scent of pine needles and damp earth filled her lungs, a welcome change from the perfumed air of the palace. The sun, filtering through the canopy of leaves overhead, painted dappled patterns on the pathways that wound their way through the park. Families strolled along the paths, their laughter carried on the breeze. Children, their faces alight with wonder, pointed excitedly at the exotic animals they encountered. For a moment, Catalina envied them, their unburdened joy, their freedom to explore without the weight of expectations. She longed to shed her royal persona, to disappear into the crowd and experience the zoo through their eyes. "Would you like a map, Your Highness?" one of the guards inquired, his voice a low murmur in her ear. Catalina shook her head, a mischievous glint in her eye. "No, thank you," she replied. Her voice barely a whisper. "I think I'll just wander." And with that she set off down one of the many paths, her heart pounding with a sense of liberation she hadn't felt in years. The path led Catalina deeper into the zoo. She paused, taking in the sights and sounds. A sign caught her eye. Panda Pavilion. Catalina had only seen pandas in books. There, amidst the greenery, were the pandas. One panda munched on bamboo, while the other played. Catalina couldn't help but smile. Leaving the panda pavilion, Catalina felt her heart lighter than it had been in years. The encounter with the pandas had awakened a sense of childlike wonder within her. The giraffe enclosure was a sight to behold, mimicking their natural habitat. A small group of giraffes roamed, their long necks swaying gracefully. One giraffe in particular caught Catalina's attention. It was taller than the others, its coat a rich, warm brown. It seemed to sense her presence, its large, liquid eyes turning to regard her. The allure of the unknown drew Catalina towards a building with a distinctly different feel. The air here hummed with a different kind of energy. A sign proclaimed it to be the reptile house. Catalina had always been fascinated by reptiles. Their cold-blooded nature and unblinking gaze intrigued her. There was an undeniable beauty in their otherness. Stepping inside, Catalina was enveloped in a world of muted light. The air hung heavy with humidity. Glass enclosures lined the walls. Catalina found herself captivated by the snakes. Their sinuous bodies moved with a hypnotic grace. She watched, mesmerized, as a boa constrictor uncoiled itself. There was a power in its stillness. Leaving the reptile house, Catalina was drawn towards the sound of gentle splashing. The aquarium beckoned her closer. The entrance was like stepping into another world. Giant tanks, illuminated by soft blue light, lined the walls. Catalina stood before a tank teeming with life. A graceful ray glided effortlessly through the water. She watched, mesmerized, as seahorses swayed gently in the current. As the afternoon wore on, Catalina felt a familiar pang of hunger. Spotting a secluded bench beneath a sprawling oak tree, she made her way towards it. A sense of peace settled over her as she sank onto the cool stone. She savored the flavors of fresh bread, cheese, and fruit. Catalina smiled at the boldness of the squirrels. Her hunger sated, Catalina felt a renewed surge of energy. Taking a deep breath, she decided to make her way towards the elephant enclosure. The elephants held a special place in her heart. Their size, intelligence, and gentle nature fascinated her. There was a certain majesty to them, a wisdom in their ancient eyes. A zookeeper, noticing Catalina's fascination with the gentle giant, approached with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. "Would you like to feed them, Your Highness?" he asked, holding out a basket overflowing with fresh leaves. Catalina's eyes widened in surprise and delight. "Could I?" she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. The thought of interacting with such a magnificent creature up close sent a thrill through her. "Of course," the zookeeper chuckled, his weathered face crinkling with good humor. "They're quite fond of these acacia leaves. Go on, don't be shy." He gently placed a handful of leaves into Catalina's outstretched palm. The leaves felt cool and slightly damp against her skin, their earthy scent filling her nostrils. Taking a deep breath, Catalina tentatively held out her hand towards the giraffe, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The giraffe, sensing no threat from the young princess, took a slow, deliberate step closer. Its long neck arched gracefully downwards, its dark eyes studying her with a gentle curiosity. Catalina held her breath, afraid to move, afraid to break the spell of this magical encounter. The giraffe's soft, velvety lips brushed against her palm as it delicately plucked the leaves from her hand. Its tongue, surprisingly long and agile, tickled her skin, causing Catalina to erupt in a fit of giggles. "They love it when you scratch behind their ears," the zookeeper offered, his voice a low rumble beside her. Tentatively, Catalina reached out with her free hand, her fingers lightly scratching the base of the giraffe's long, elegant neck. The giraffe lowered its head slightly, as if enjoying the attention, its soft, warm breath ruffling her hair. The sound of delighted squeals and excited chatter drew Catalina's attention away from the gentle giants. A group of children, their faces alight with wonder, hurried past, their eyes fixed on a building with a distinctly different feel. The air around this building seemed to hum with a different kind of energy, a primal energy that sent a shiver down Catalina's spine. The sign above the entrance, etched in stone and partially obscured by creeping vines, read, "Reptile House." Catalina had always been both fascinated and slightly intimidated by reptiles. Their cold-blooded nature, their scales and slithering movements seemed to belong to a world completely foreign to her own. Yet there was an undeniable beauty in their otherness, a stark elegance that drew her in. "Would you like to see the reptiles, Your Highness?" one of her guards asked, his voice a low murmur in her ear. Catalina hesitated for a moment, torn between her curiosity and a flicker of apprehension. "Yes," Catalina finally replied, her voice firm despite her slight nervousness. "I believe I would." Taking a deep breath, she followed her guards towards the reptile house, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and a healthy dose of fear. Stepping inside, Catalina was enveloped in a world of muted light and earthy scents. The air hung heavy with humidity, the temperature noticeably warmer than the spring air outside. The only sounds were the soft hiss of misters and the gentle dripping of water. Glass enclosures lined the walls, each one home to a different species of reptile. Snakes coiled gracefully on branches, their scales shimmering under the soft glow of heat lamps. Lizards basked on rocks, their eyes bright with an ancient intelligence. Turtles paddled lazily in pools of water, their shells intricately patterned with whorls and lines. Catalina found herself drawn to a terrarium filled with vibrantly colored poison dart frogs. Their skin, a kaleidoscope of blues, greens and yellows, seemed to pulsate with an almost otherworldly glow. A sign warned of their toxicity, a reminder that beauty often hid a hidden danger. Drawn by the soft murmur of voices and the gentle splashing of water, Catalina left the reptile house and followed a path towards the aquarium. The aquarium was a world of ethereal beauty, a symphony in shades of blue and green. Giant sea turtles glided gracefully, their movements slow and deliberate. She watched, mesmerized, as reef sharks circled gracefully, their movements fluid and effortless. The ocean, she realized, was a world of beauty and mystery, filled with wonders. As the afternoon sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the zoo pathways, Catalina sought a peaceful spot. She found sanctuary beneath a majestic banyan tree. A moss-covered bench beckoned invitingly. The air was still and peaceful, filled with whispers of leaves and soft chirping birds. Catalina closed her eyes, breathing deeply the sweet, earthy scent of the forest floor. Refreshed and rejuvenated by her quiet interlude beneath the banyan tree, Catalina felt a renewed surge of energy. The zoo would be closing soon, and there was one final exhibit she was determined to see: the elephant sanctuary. The elephants held a particular fascination for Catalina. Their massive size, their quiet intelligence, and their complex social structures spoke of a different way of being in the world, designed to mimic the elephant's natural habitat as closely as possible. A group of elephants, their wrinkled hides etched with the wisdom of years, moved slowly across the savannah. There was a timeless quality to their movements, a sense of ancient rhythm that seemed to resonate deep within Catalina's soul. Catalina settled onto the cool grass beneath the oak tree, its shade a welcome respite from the afternoon sun. The air hummed with the quiet symphony of the zoo. Unpacking her picnic basket, she breathed in the aroma of fresh bread and ripe berries. A small brown squirrel peeked out from behind the oak tree. Emboldened by her stillness, the squirrel scurried closer. A giggle escaped her lips, and the squirrel darted back behind the tree. Catalina, charmed by the creature's antics, felt a surge of warmth in her chest. Carefully, Catalina broke off a small piece of her bread and placed it on the edge of the blanket. The squirrel, its curiosity outweighing its fear, cautiously emerged from behind the tree. It darted forward, snatched the breadcrumb, and scurried back to the oak tree. Catalina watched, her heart filled with tender amusement. Delighted, she offered another morsel, which the squirrel accepted with a grateful chirp. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and gold, Catalina reluctantly rose from her spot beneath the oak tree. She made her way towards the zoo's exit, her heart filled with contentment and a tinge of sadness. Pausing by a tranquil pond, its surface shimmering with the reflected colors of the sunset, Catalina watched as a family of ducks glided peacefully across the water. The tranquility of the scene filled her with a sense of peace she had almost forgotten. As she stepped out of the zoo gates and into the waiting carriage, Catalina couldn't shake the feeling that something within her had shifted. The world seemed different, more vibrant and alive. The bustling city streets now held a certain charm, a reflection of the boundless diversity she had witnessed within the zoo's walls. She knew she would return to her life of royal duties, but she carried with her the memories of her magical weekend at the zoo. As the last of the sunlight faded behind the city skyline, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, Catalina found herself back in the familiar confines of her royal world. The imposing doors revealed a world of polished marble and sparkling chandeliers. A part of her yearned to turn and run back to the sanctuary of the zoo, to the company of creatures who lived with unfettered joy. Closing her eyes, Catalina inhaled deeply, etching the scent into her memory, a secret talisman against her royal world. The grand ballroom, aglow with candlelight and echoing with the strains of a waltz orchestra, shimmered around Catalina. Her silk gown, a confection of pale blue and silver, rustled softly with each step. She had never felt more out of place, aware of the invisible barriers separating her from the world beyond the palace walls. Yet amidst the opulence, a strange sense of peace settled over Catalina. She carried within her heart a secret treasure, memories more precious than any jewel. The memory of that day at the zoo became a touchstone for Catalina, a source of strength and inspiration. She often sought solace in the palace gardens, her fingers tracing the delicate petals of a wildflower. The lessons from the zoo stayed with her, shaping her perspective. She began to see the world through different eyes, noticing the intricate patterns of nature. Her fascination with the natural world extended beyond the palace walls. She sketched the creatures she encountered, capturing their spirits. The princess, once content with privilege, yearned for something more meaningful. She took long rides through the royal forest, discovering hidden paths and wonders. Catalina began to create her own freedom, one daring adventure at a time. The lessons of connection and compassion guided her, shaping her into a wise ruler. Princess Catalina discovered that true freedom lay in embracing her passions and living a life that honored the wild spirit within her.